Greetings and welcome to another edition of AUHSD Future Talks. I'm your host, Michael Matsuda, the Superintendent of the Anaheim Union High School District. And as our 7,000 plus podcast listeners know, this show is dedicated to the future of public education. And we've been so lucky to have amazing guests. And our amazing guest today is Arlene Inouye. She has served as the UTLA, United Teachers of Los Angeles, Secretary, Treasurer, and Bargaining Co-Chair. And she has recently retired, but like many activists, she's never retired, right? Arlene, you are currently work part-time with UCLA Asian American Studies Center on the Multimedia Textbook project. And you also work with the California AAPI Legislative Caucus, committed to teach AAPI history. So you wear a lot of hats, Arlene, but let's start with the hat you based your whole life on. And let's hear a little bit about your life, Arlene.
Well, thank you, Michael, and I'm pleased to join you on your podcast here. Yes. I have had a very interesting life. I feel like pathways have opened up to me. I'm a third generation Japanese American, born and raised in Los Angeles. My mother's from the Boyle Heights area, and my father was a farmer from Stockton, California. And as you know, during World War II, on the West Coast was the incarceration of my family members. And I know your mother as well was not able to finish her high school. My mother was just out of high school, so she was in community college, around 20 years old, when the FBI came to her house and took my grandfather, who was a business owner. He owned a department store called Horry Brothers, with several brothers. So my mother's family volunteered to go to Manzanar as a family. And my father his family went to Roar, Arkansas, but he was able to get a scholarship and go to art school in Chicago and became the trailblazer for the rest of the family to come out. And yeah, it was really fascinating. But they did my father lost a sister to tuberculosis during camp. And my grandmother became mentally ill, which is totally understandable, hearing about all the stress that people came to her farm, and just the uncertainties and losing a daughter during the war. So it's something that my family didn't talk about. My mother has told me a little bit, but basically we didn't know very much. And when I grew up in West Los Angeles, I very much tried to be the good little Asian girl. People would say, "You speak English so well. And what country are you really from?" So right away, you get messages that you are an other, you're from somewhere else, and you don't belong. So I think for most of my education, I wasn't really engaged and I was in schools first with all Caucasians, and then I was with other Japanese and other races, but I kind of always felt different. Like I didn't really feel comfortable with either group. So it took me a while to work through my identity. And in fact, I had really bought into trying to be that model minority. And it wasn't until that crumbled for me, and I had an experience where I was in almost like you would call it a Christian group that kind of became more like a cult in terms of a leader making all the decisions. And so my leaving that was kind of an opportunity for me to find out who I am. And from there, things opened up. I was a speech therapist, and so in Los Angeles Unified for 18 years. And then I was encouraged to run for office for the union, United Teachers Los Angeles. And so I ended up winning when I didn't know anything about the union. But I had actually been organizing students to learn about the options to military recruiting, because I saw military recruiters on campus 24, 8 hours a day. And I was very concerned when the war in Iraq broke out. So I did some organizing without even knowing what I was doing, but just feeling like these kids are going to die, and they don't even know why they're going to war. So that's what the union was attracted to my activism and encouraged me to run for office. And I won, and I was an officer of UTLA for 12 years. We did a transformation of the union, focusing on social justice, focusing on parent community engagement, and really changing things from teachers being targeted, feeling like they were demoralized and they were the villain, to showing that, look, at teachers are not getting paid for their education, and they are, we support public schools, and the whole idea of demonizing them was for privatizing our schools. So I was able to be engaged in that struggle until I retired last June. But I am still doing some labor organizing, kind of as a volunteer, and then I joined the UCLA Asian American Studies for getting curriculum, Asian American and Pacific Islander curriculum, into the public schools. And the reason I feel very, very passionate about that is because my granddaughter, who's 17 years old in Escondido, California, recently asked about our family trauma from the camps. And she said that she's not learning anything in school, doesn't learn anything about Asian Americans in school. And I was very, very concerned, shocked that after 60 years, 50 years, things haven't changed, because I didn't learn anything in school. And I think that did not help me in terms of who I am, and help me as a person. So I don't want other kids to go through the model minority stereotype and other things where they are put into they're either invisible or they're seen in a certain way, and they don't have any idea of their history, nor the history of other Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders or other groups. So our goal is to create historical empathy, to create a curriculum that has narrative change, that's comprehensive, that shows our full story, including the struggles, but also the resilience and the solidarity movements that have taken place over the years. We know very, very little.
So I'm glad you focused on the word building empathy and understanding, right? Because there's so much, there is pushback against ethnic studies, or against, this ethnic histories within American history. I think, because I think there's just a lot of misunderstanding of that. Can you explore that a little bit more in terms of what is ethnic studies, and why is that important for every American youth?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Michael. So ethnic studies came out of the 1960s, 70s student movement, where it was born, and it focuses on the four ethnic groups, specific ethnic groups who have been, who have not been a part of our, regular society. The Asian American and Pacific Islanders, the African American group, the Latinx group, and the Native Americans. So those are the four groups that are identified in ethnic studies, and it's to show from their stories, their perspective, their history, a perspective on history, and on their perspective of who they are. So what we have generally is a curriculum that's Eurocentric, that we are taught that perspective. And when you are only seen from a Eurocentric perspective, then you are seen like as a second-class citizen, or you're invisible. You're not even shown in the history books. You're seen as the other. You're as a foreigner. You are not really American, and that is really a detriment to who we are as a nation, right? This nation is made up of many different ethnic groups. And yes, it is challenging learning how to live together and learning how to share resources. But I think some of the attacks are because there is a threat as people of color are growing population, growing numbers in this nation, and growing in political power, in representation, and visibility in many occupations. There is a threat to those who have traditionally had the power, who want to continue to keep that power. So they're using all kinds of weird arguments, like the anti-CRT argument. They want to ban books, and again, they are attacking also gay and lesbian youth. They're attacking trans youth. They're attacking people who don't fit into the white person, Caucasian, that has been the traditional Eurocentric approach. So, yeah. So there was pushback back then, and I think that continues.
Yes. So, there are people in our system, teachers or administrators, that would say, well, these are very volatile issues that you're talking about, issues of race and ethnicity and gender. And don't those belong in churches or religious institutions? I mean, you're talking about morality, or, and I'm just playing devil's advocate, Arlene, that, people say, well, I'm not trained to be a human relations expert. I teach math, or I teach history, or whatever. So how would you respond to that?
Yes, I would say, yes, we all want to be human. We all want to be treated as humans. And I believe that is part of what the problem has been. When you have been oppressed in this country, you have not been seen as human. There are the stereotypes. There are the negative images. Those are dehumanizing. What we want to do is lift up the humanity of every person, every group, so that everyone has a chance to be a full citizen of this country and a full human being. So I would say that we have been dehumanized, and that's why we want to humanize through ethnic studies. That's what ethnic studies does. You see through the eyes of each group what they have experienced, what they have gone through in their life, and the stories behind who they are. And I think that is dignifying and humanizing, that everyone should have.
So you would argue that ethnic studies actually brings people together through understanding, including Caucasians and white folks that have been oppressed throughout history as well, right? Definitely, because it's not, people see ethnic studies as just sort of this siloed, and it's very by race or ethnicity. But you would say, no, it actually brings folks together through raising people's understanding and empathy.
Exactly. And there's a saying, I don't know if I'm saying it right, but Ikesh, that it's I am you and you are me. Mm-hmm. And that is the goal of ethics. It is about love. It is about seeing the other person, the humanity of the other person, and embracing them. And that's why it builds that historical empathy, is that you open yourself up to see the full humanity of others.
You had mentioned one of your relatives having mental illness, mental health issues, and you kind of intimated that it's not surprising given what your family went through. Would you argue that fast forward to now, where there's so much otherness and hatred of others, right? Whoever the other is, that really it's rooted in sort of a hate, self-hate, and not doing the sort of self-love that you're talking about, that because so many young people now, I see so many of them feeling isolated and othered by others who are in more power. Could you comment on that and its relationship to mental health, especially with young people?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that it starts with yourself and being able to love yourself and feel that you're okay. I had to personally free myself. I was at the age of 47 when I went through a real healing experience, going back to the past. And I remember specifically in kindergarten when I made the decision to be that good little Asian girl. I think before that, I was a free spirit, but there was something that I learned right away in school, right? That who gets loved or who gets accepted is a certain kind of image or being a certain way. And so it took me a long time, but once I was able to love myself and free myself, I felt like life just opened up, because I was literally like in a prison, and I started seeing colors and flowers, and I was really happy because there's something about coming to your own self-love that frees you to love others, to see others, and to experience life, and not, like before I was just trying to do the right thing and felt, like I wasn't living at all. So I do believe that it starts from there. And I think that when people hate, it's because they hate themselves. I mean, they haven't come to terms with themselves. And or maybe there's another reason. Maybe they're just, they were deprived as a child, and they, I mean, I don't know if I'm not a psychologist. I can't explain all that, but I do know that when you come from a place of love, then you want to share that love and you are accepting of other people.
I would say you are a psychologist. Everybody is a psychologist. you just explained it so well that it, I think the irony is that love is, we have a limitless power to give love, but we're so stingy with it, right? And it seems to be easier just to withhold love and hate others so we can feel, it's an artificial sense of feeling better or superior.
Well, one thing about that too, Michael, is we've learned that there's only a certain amount of resources in the pot, and you have to get your share. And that's part of a competitive society, a capitalistic society, where you are, you're taught to compete, and you're taught that if you don't get it, you lose. So I think there's all those dynamics about, being brought up in this country as well.
Yeah, I think this is very exciting work that you're doing now. And I think that it's needed more than ever, Arlene. What are some of the more immediate things ahead for you with this work, given the divisiveness in this country?
Yeah, I think this is a very, very critical time in our society in the U.S. You see a growing attacks, a growing hatred, as you pointed out, along with a lot, like, I want to put it out there, the student movement now. It's pretty amazing how disciplined, how accepting, how they're peaceful and non-hierarchical. We're seeing the leaders today and it again, there's not like one person that's being elevated as we have in the past, one leader, but really more of a learning community, more of learning solidarity, which I have been very encouraged by as I see youth today, as I see workers today. For example, the auto workers who have traditionally been, America only cars and so forth, they're now reaching out to Mexico and the Mexican workers in the auto field and saying, we will fight with you. They get 1/10 the workers that 1/10 the pay that they do in the US, saying we will make sure you get the resources, and we're all in this together. And I think we're coming to a place, I hope, that people do see that we are all in this together. Globally, we're all in this together, and that we're going to either survive or we're going to not survive together. But there's a sense of a growing awareness of the connectivity that we have, and the urgency that we have in this time, because there are people who do hate. There are people who do want to hurt other people, and there's a lot of violence committed, and it's alarming. It's alarming to know that we're at a point too in history where people can destroy the world. That it's a time for us. We have to do what we need to do right now in order for us to save this planet. I mean, we know that whether it's climate justice, we know whether it's war, we know whether it's racial attacks. These are all life and death matters.
Well, we are so lucky to have you as an advocate for not only our young people, but this whole human civilization. And the Arlene Inouye, the recent awardee of the NEA Human and Civil Rights Ellison S. Onizuka Award in 2023. Thank you so much for your time for this short interview. We'd love to get back with you and hear more. And on behalf of our 7,000 listeners and our 27,000 students, thank you so much, Arlene Inouye, for your amazing work in the field of social justice.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to be here, Michael.